And thanks to our chair, Rob Ducot, getting Bret Lane with 1T, correct? And Bret is a CB, which, if you know what that stands for, anyone know what that stands for? I wrote it down. And Naval Mobile Construction Battalion, hence CB. So hopefully he will regale us with his stories around the world. The Navy in Kern County, we don't have enough water, Lake Ming maybe. But hopefully the rapids will get back up to par. But we're really happy to have Bret talk about natural gas industry. A lot of folks have alluded to it, so not sure his favorite musician, but he can probably give us that information. Bret Lane, please.
All right, good afternoon, and I can tell you I'm glad I did not see Richard last night. And also, I'm not talking to Richard. That's a very good lesson learned. Well, again, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity for us to be here to chat a little bit, especially the great work that Kern County is doing. I want to recognize EDC and one of our own. Rob serves as the chair, I believe, right now, so thank you for that. What I'd like to do, and in fact, I'm probably going to make some of our people nervous. You know, they gave me this 10-page thing, and I'm not going to read it. But what I thought I would do is actually try to pull together some of the things that I've heard so far this morning, because I do think it's important, and especially with what all of you are doing here in Kern County. Because I can tell you, as I travel around different parts of the country, and you know, as I hear and see the bullish nature, especially around natural gas, but when I come back to California, that view can be a little different from some different parties. And so as I hear all aspects of energy here in this room and see how it's integrated and looked at of how do you pull it together, to me, you guys set an example that a lot of people really need to think about and follow as we move forward. I do want to say it is nice being back in Bakersfield. I'm an old Okie. I was born and raised there. So also, as a background, I actually come from the oil industry. I'm a petroleum engineer, so this is also like a second coming to me. I know a lot of people from when I worked before in this industry up here. Let's talk about natural gas for a second, but you know, from our perspective, Southern California Gas, that you know, for some that don't realize, we're actually the largest gas company in the United States, third or fourth largest in the world. You know, we have about 5.5 million customers, 20 plus million consumers. And, you know, we do take seriously, because if you look at the kind of the age of our workforce, most people, when they come to work, they stay because we're integrated in the community. I think I heard that earlier. You know, it's not like we can pick our pipes up and go somewhere else. We're here, and we're part of the solutions as we move forward. But, you know, as we sit and look at the challenges that we face, and I think Dan, he showed a slide earlier, somebody was asking, I think that was downtown Los Angeles. I don't know where Dan is here, but that was actually a picture of downtown LA, and I remember that from the early 80s, where you could not see the San Gabriel Mountains as an example. But if you look at, you know, regulatory agencies who took a look and set a goal and then really got out of the way and let industry, you know, do its thing, which we do. We're going to find different ways, different solutions that achieves what you saw in that second picture. You know, as I look at natural gas really from a national or really from a global perspective, you know, it's fascinating to me what the whole shale boom has done. Where 8 years ago, you know, we're heavily, and I think there was a chart earlier, we're heavily energy dependent to where now we're at a point of energy independence. You know, and what this has done, how this has really unlocked a lot of different opportunities across the country. You know, one of the things that we sit and see is, you know, the development that's going on in the Northeast, and I think there was a slide earlier about some of the volatility in the price. Well, I can sit and tell you about a little event that happened in February real quick. You know, one of the issues is we see more and more use of natural gas as coal plants are retired, as actually cities are converting. You know, New York City right now is in the process of converting from the use of bunker oil or fuel oil to natural gas. So you can imagine the amount of work that's going on, but the amount of demand that's going to be there for natural gas. One issue the Northeast sees is capacity. It is a known capacity constrained area. So what happened this last February, and I think it was Arctic Express 2 or 3 that was hitting by that time, of us just laying over that area, gas prices started going up because people were trying to get it because they didn't have capacity. So you could see the volatility of the price go up. Ironically for us, and to give you an example for SoCalGas, we get over 90% of our gas from out of state. You know, we only have about 10% that we can use daily that's produced in state. Well, when we're seeing prices at our border of around $12 to $13, you know, you're seeing prices in the Northeast that went over 100. You're seeing prices in Chicago that was over 80 at the time. It really was not an issue of supply. It was simply being able to move that gas. The other thing that you're seeing, which to me is really interesting nationally, is how gas is now really, it's reversing flow, where in the past everything was pushed up, you know, really from the Gulf area to the Midwest and the Northeast. Now, especially with the big plays of Marcellus and others, you're actually seeing that gas flow down toward the Gulf Coast. So again, it's a huge opportunity for us. But now as I shift to California, and you know, California has some of the heaviest regulations within all of the United States. California's been a leader in setting standards, you know, and you can see the results of them because we need to address some issues that we have. You know, it's a leader of passing AB 32, and you saw a little slide earlier about, you know, the aggressive goals that we all have to address this issue around climate change. One of the concerns that we have around this, though, is there are some that we hear that feel that it's an electric-only mandate. But if you look at actually some of the plans that they've tried to get there, you cannot get there electric only at this time. From the gas company's perspective, we love seeing wind, we love seeing solar, development of batteries, because ultimately, again, it's an integrated solution and an integrated package as we move forward. But we think there's other things that can be done. You know, I think somebody was showing that infamous duck curve earlier. The irony for us, we actually see the same thing on our side. We're seeing a really interesting blip as that slope, you know, as the power itself comes off, when the wind dies, sun goes down, well, existing electric generation goes on. As that ramps up, our system's going up because of the load that's there. I think we also saw a slide earlier about, you know, some of the new technology, which again to me is really cool that we see out there with GE, with their advanced turbines that they have with the combined cycle units. There's a new peaker, fairly new, that's out in Palm Springs area as an example, 800 megawatt unit. This thing can go from, you know, around 0 to 800 megawatts in about 15 minutes. So if you think about the old base load iron, you know, that we're all used to, 12, 16 hours spinning up, our system is being used in a different way, but that's how we supplement. That's how we make this integrated energy system work as we move forward. We also see other evolution occurring around, you know, the smaller generation, where we see further applications with microturbines that are truly advancing in technology. You know, we see further application around fuel cells, combined heat and power. And for us, again, we're bullish on all that. We think it's a great opportunity to address the issues that we have today on the intermittency around some of the renewable side. I'll shift back to a second on the focus around, you know, our targets that we need to achieve by 2050 from a greenhouse gas reduction standpoint. Well, there's another one, again, mentioned earlier that's out there, and that's from the Federal Clean Air Act. And, you know, it's been around since 1970, has been amended a couple of times. Probably a lot of you in the room know, but in case you don't, there are only 2 severe non-attainment regions in the United States, and they're both here. San Joaquin Valley and the South Coast. Part of it's geography. You know, if you look at the South Coast, you know, that LA Basin area couldn't set in a more perfect bowl. But I can tell you from a stationary source perspective, having been involved with this for a very long time, I mean, back to the early days of backed and then barked and, all the best available control technologies. The types of reductions that we've seen, we're already far below 1990 levels from a stationary source perspective. So today, if you look at the NOx requirements or the reductions that are needed to hit the 2023 goal, as an example, and you lay that on top of some of the ideas floated around to reach the 2050 goal for greenhouse gas reductions, we fall extremely short of the NOx reductions. We think that's something that's got to be addressed. For those that were around 90 or so, and there's a couple of districts in California that were struggling to meet some of the air district requirements, well, as I call it, the feds came in and rattled their chain a little bit and said, we'll get your attention. If you don't meet this, we're going to strip you of all your transportation funding and we're going to implement no drive days. Imagine that. It's something that we can't afford to miss. I think we have a great opportunity with it, though, because, again, as you look at it in both of those basins, it's about 20% that's stationary source, which means the other 80% is transportation. Love hearing about the LEAF, the electric vehicle push. The other side of that is the heavy-duty vehicle side. We see also tremendous opportunity in the rail side, as well as the ports, because if you look at the implementation or the process they have there with the drayage units moving the goods around, and as I set up here, which is, a tremendous agricultural area for this entire country and the amount of goods that are moved around. What we see there is an opportunity that, again, as I'm talking to some, they say, well, we don't want to invest in natural gas. We want to wait on technology to develop. My view is, why do we have to wait? We actually have engines today that can be certified less than what's called clean diesel. I know working with Cummins, and we've worked with them quite a bit, there is a next generation that is a very low NOx engine. This is an opportunity to deal with those transportation markets, to address those issues. And why is it important, I think, for all of us from a health perspective, and this again was mentioned a little earlier, if you look at NOx in particular, it is known to have issues as far as exacerbating issues with asthma. It causes respiratory issues. Another piece that's been mapped now is if you look at the absenteeism rate in grade schools, the highest absenteeism rates are actually from those that live next to freeways, heavy freeway arterial roads. Who lives most closely to those? Generally low income. And again, the issue is that transportation corridor. We think it's a huge opportunity for a variety of segments of the markets to come together to address the issue around transportation. That will help us meet not only the standards we have to meet in 2023 and 32, but also the standards that we need to meet ultimately for 2050. Do we have challenges? Absolutely. But again, I see it as a huge opportunity for all of us. As I look and see what Kern is doing as far as how to integrate this energy that we have, I think you serve as a great example for all of us, because ultimately it helps the economy, it helps us generate jobs, because one of the things that you'll hear me and others talk a lot about, we have to bring the affordable statement into the question and into the solution. It has to be affordable. We've seen how solar has rapidly reduced, where it is more affordable today. It's got to be part of that discussion so that we can produce more jobs in California, that we can help the economy. And again, from our view, natural gas, it's not a bridge. It is a part of a long-term solution for not only California, but for the country as well. As we sit and look at it and I was thrilled to see the work PG&E did earlier from a workforce perspective, and I think a lot of companies, a lot of industries are in a very similar shape as some of us baby boomers are kind of at the end of our runway, and we're starting to slide out. We're going to see some fairly large numbers of people retiring from the workforce. And it's important and incumbent upon all of us of how, what are we doing to develop the next generation that's going to run our respective industries and companies that we have. We're a huge supporter of STEM. we think that that is a critical piece, especially for the energy industry, where we're actively engaged with a lot of local schools, community colleges. The other thing, and again, just from a personal interest side, we're also engaged heavily on the veteran community for those not only to say thank you and recognize those that have served, the men and women that have served, but the critical and phenomenal skill set that they bring of having served and what more that they can do. We think those are huge opportunities for all of us as we move forward. A little bit as far as from an investment perspective, again, we span the southern half of California. Over the next 5 years, we're actually investing over $6 billion in a lot of capital improvements, one of which is our pipeline safety enhancement plan. We have some work up here where we're installing different types of valve configurations. We're also doing some pipeline enhancements around our system to make sure that we can meet the demand that we know is going to be there especially from a peaker or a power generation side. We're about halfway through installing what we call our advanced meter, and we're actually seeing that as a platform that we're going to push forward more on actually how you can deploy methane sensors around those platforms to really ultimately better understand, what is the magnitude of methane emissions within our sector. There's a huge focus on that issue, and we think there should be. We've been involved a very long time in that. But as you look at that issue today, there's over 200 academic studies that have been commissioned on methane emissions. Hardly any of them line up. Part of it is how they went about the study. The most general difference is they call it bottom up and top down. Bottom up is simply you're trying to actually measure a piece of equipment on the ground. The top down generally is aerial. They're flying it. Again, they're both important. Let's integrate that data today so that we make the best informed decision that we can, as we move forward. We're a heavy believer in technology as well. For those that are in the pipeline area, we've been involved a lot over the last 10 to 12 years in the development actually of robotic smart pigs, so that a lot of pipelines that you can't pig today to make sure that the line is safe, we now have actually deployed 2 or 3 different versions of robotic pigs, and it's amazing to me, again, as I think about the younger generation coming up and watching them, as far as from the robotics classes and all of this. A funny anecdote real quick. I was out on a job one day, and I was talking to what they call the pilot and the co-pilot, and they're both sitting with laptops, and the pilot is running the machine, and the co-pilot is navigating him. So I'm chatting with them. They're both 25. And I said, well, you probably were like what, being somewhat sarcastic, the captain of your robotics team in high school. Actually, sir, I was involved with robotics in grade school. I've learned I don't even talk to them anymore. They speak a different language to me. I loved also seeing the drone earlier. We're proud of our sister utility that we run the gas system for, San Diego Gas and Electric. We actually got the first FAA permit on how to use drones, and we're looking at it from the electric side, especially from a vegetation perspective. On the gas side, what we're doing, and again, why that sensor housing is so important, we're looking at installing different types of methane emission detectors, imaging, thermal imaging of how we might use that as well, that could be able to rapidly respond. So, again, as we look at it from a workforce development perspective, and all the opportunities are there for the younger workforce coming in that embrace this kind of technology. Because again, as I look at it, it's not about setting winners around, I want to choose this technology over that. Ultimately, and our push is, our policymakers set targets, set goals, then get out of the way. Industry will respond around those kind of issues. And I think we can respond together. And again, as I look at what all of you have done, it's a great indicator of what we can do within the entire state. A little data point on how things can happen. Somebody earlier had mentioned the importance of energy efficiency. We've been involved with this for many years, and I can tell you a little over 20 years worth of the work that we've done with our customers to help deliver more energy efficient appliances into their house. It has resulted in the equivalent of over 500,000 cars off the road. That's the impact that you can have with energy efficiency as we move it forward. We can do that in other areas. So again, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to come in and chat with you a little bit today. But again, from our view, this is one that we see, especially on the natural gas side. There's just huge opportunities. We simply need to think about how do we leverage together with all other forms of energy to help California move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett, and sorry about the Cowboys. I think they're 5-4, 7th in the Big 12. But Brett has a petroleum engineering degree that you're at home in Kern County. So thank you again. And Lorelei, she's